Hello there, welcome to my channel. This video I'm going to talk about the Fujitsu Quaderno. This is actually the third generation version of this device that we'll be talking about today. And my focus is on why I won't be reviewing the device. Now I know that's a little bit of an odd concept, particularly for my channel, where I tend to focus on reviewing devices with a little bit of a positive slant, which reflects my personality. But in this particular case, I wanted to do this video for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that invariably someone's going to ask, will I be reviewing this device? So this is basically going to outline why I'm not going to. But also, I think that thought process is important for anyone considering purchasing the Quaderno. And you'll see what I mean as we go through this. So one of the things that I've emphasized in past videos is that I do have a budget, and I do have to be kind of considerate about the devices that I review. And that's a little bit of a factor here, as we'll see. But I think the bigger factor is that when I go into reviewing a device, I make an assessment. And the assessment is, well, does this device bring anything to the table that's unique? That, even if it's just focusing on a particular niche, does it move that niche forward? And with the Quaderno, there's a niche there, but it just didn't quite rise to the level that I thought that the device might be a potential to recommend. And that's something I really want to go into reviewing a device, a sense that maybe it's possible that this device could succeed either overall or in some area. So before we go into the details of my thought process around that, let's kind of talk about what this device actually is. And I'm going to put some excerpts here on the screen that basically are from their website. And you can see there's the device and its asking price of $720. Here's a little bit of the specifications outlined on that website. And you can pause the video if you want to read through those. I'm not going to go into great detail on those items here. And then finally, these are the accessories that come with the device. Note that there is no cover. Not only does the device not come with a cover, at least as of this filming, there is no cover to buy as an accessory outside of the device itself. So that's just something to be aware of. So that is the Fujitsu Quaderno. Now again, this is the third generation version. The Quaderno has been around for a couple iterations going back to pre-COVID. And it's always been relatively well known as a PDF reader and annotator, and then maybe to a lesser degree around its kind of note-taking capability. But I think it's really kind of a successor, or a successor rather, to the Sony DPT-1, which is kind of a Hall of Fame device, if you will, released in the early 2010s, that basically kind of revolutionized and really started to help kick off this whole e-note-taking industry. So the Quaderno was kind of a successor to that and kind of has a soft spot, I think, in a lot of people's hearts as it relates to that history. The second generation of the device was really hard to get in Western markets. You really had to do a lot of hoops in order to be able to find it. And so that particular model kind of disappeared from Western consciousness. And now here with the third generation, it's available that you can buy right off of Fujitsu's website, even in Western markets. So that's kind of where we find ourselves here today in this third generation version of the device. All right, so my assessment or analysis of what the Quaderno might make in the marketplace, I think is best expressed relative to the recently released Boox Max, which I reviewed and really feel strongly positive about. And I think that's a great reference point given how new that device is to the market, how successful it's been, etc. So we'll go ahead and look at the pros of each in comparison to each other. But we'll start with the Quaderno. So the first thing that comes to mind, and really the headliner here of this third generation device, is color. People have been asking for color on a 13-inch device for a while now, and the Quaderno is the second device to do so. I don't remember the name of the first device, but it utilizes the same screen technology, which is Kaleido 3 on a 13-inch size screen. So the interesting thing though here about this version of Kaleido 3, unlike on the 10-inch version, is that the black and white pixel density, or PPI, is about 207, whereas the color is half of that, around 103. And I might be off 1 or 2 points there, but that's less than what we expect now with 10-inch devices, where the black and white is 300 and the color is 150 ppi. So, be aware of that limitation. Nevertheless, I still think it's legitimate to think of this as a positive for the Quaderno for the following reasons. First off, as it comes to pixel density, that's much less of a relevant thing as it relates to note-taking and highlighting. So the main role of the Quaderno really, which is around notes and PDF annotating, I think that level of color is still a valid positive for the device. Also, Kaleido 3 has obviously these higher resolution specs, but the predecessor, which was Kaleido Plus, which also had 100 ppi in color on 10-inch screen, so similar to this device, was actually pretty good. The jump from Kaleido Plus to Kaleido 3 was much less than you might think. Now, Kaleido 3 is the better technology, and in some cases, the additional pixel density does help. But the biggest difference I noticed when we made that transition wasn't that the colors suddenly looked better, but it was that the blacks were more defined. So you could see more detail if there were black lines in an image in Kaleido 3 than you could see in Kaleido Plus. So this is a Kaleido 3 screen on the Quaderno, so that lower PPI may not be as much of a disadvantage as you might think. The story is probably a little different in viewing PDFs with color images. Those images will probably be prone to looking a little more grainy. So there probably is a negative aspect to this reduction in resolution, but I think the color still brings an overall positive given what the Quaderno does and focuses on. So we'll list that here as such. In addition to that, there's the weight of the device. The weight of the Quaderno, roughly, I think it's between 360 and 370 grams. That's what we expect of the lightest 10-inch devices that have been released over, say, the last 6 months or so, whether we're talking about the Viwood's AI paper or the Supernote Manta or the Boox Go. These light devices are currently on 10-inch screens. The Quaderno does it on a 13-inch screen. And you can imagine the distribution of that weight probably will make it feel like a very light device and an easy to hold device as a result. So that's a definite plus. And this is, by the way, consistent with previous generations of the Quaderno. That's not new, but it's definitely something notable versus other devices being released today. And the final thing I'll point out is around the durability. So the way they've made it light is relying on plastics, and that means that the device is flexible, it can handle some bending, probably much more able to withstand falls or blunt pressure than other devices that feature glass, like a Note Max, for example. So that's a pretty notable feature. So those are the three things I think ultimately really highlight the opportunities and the potential success of the Quaderno device. So now let's then turn to the things that Note Max does better, and it's a pretty extensive list. So it's going to start off with the price. The Note Max comes in at $650 to the Quaderno's $720, a $70 gap. That's pretty significant. Even more significant if you purchase the Max device from Boox, where you get the cover for free, a cover that the Quaderno does not have. So that's a big advantage in the Max's favor. The resolution, the black and white on the Max is 300 ppi, which is really nice. It really comes through and is a pretty solid plus, obviously, for the Max. Google Play, just having the ability to download apps just makes the utility of the Max device, way more than is the case with the Quaderno. Again, that focuses on just PDFs and some handwriting. You can do a lot more with the Note Max, whether it's reading newspapers with Press Reader or using Microsoft Office applications or email, and just goes on and on. You can do these things because of the Google Play access, which is not available on the Quaderno. The note-taking application for Boox is incredibly detailed. It's well thought out. As many viewers know, it's not my favorite note-taking app, but it's still really good. and it's among the best apps, if not the best, just depending on your preferences. Contrast that to the Quaderno, which is very simplistic. There's very little going on there. I think of the Quaderno, at least as I've seen it in other YouTube videos, as kind of in between the Kindle Scribe and the Bigme note-taking devices, and closer to the Kindle Scribe, frankly. So very simple, not a lot of features there. So clearly the Note Max provides, is on the other extreme with the most feature-laden note-taking app out there. A huge advantage, I think, ultimately for the Note Max. The document type. So while the Quaderno focuses on PDFs, you can read PDFs on the Boox device, but you can also read CBRs, you can also read EPUBs, you can also read doc files, and so on. Boox devices have the largest range of document types that are supported than any other manufacturer that I'm aware of, and so that's a huge differentiator between these two devices. Again, I talked a little bit about the cover. Now, when you buy from Boox, there is always that caveat that if you end up not liking the device and wanting to return it, it's a bit of a nightmare. So that has to be said. Nevertheless, if you don't end up returning the device, you can get this nice cover that's included in the price that I think is fairly well done, whereas the Fujitsu has no cover at all. At least the third generation doesn't. Previous generations of the Quaderno did have covers and actually had multiple options, so perhaps a cover is coming, but right now, as of this filming anyway, there was none available. And the last thing I'll point out is that the stylus for the Note Max, I think, is superior to what the Quaderno has. Now, this is a little bit of preference showing on my part, but I'll make my case. So the Note stylus has been the same stylus on pretty much every Note device that Boox has released, which is this kind of groove stylus. It's nice to hold, it has a magnet, but there's an argument to be made that Quadernos, which features a button and an end-capped eraser, is more functional. My pushback on that, and the reason why I list this ultimately as a pro for the Max, is that this magnet allows it to attach to the device very solidly for the Note Max, whereas there's no such thing on the Quaderno. In fact, the stylus is just loose. I don't see any way to attach it to the device at all. So that, to me, means that the Note stylus implementation is much better than Quaderno's, who frankly is also using a classic and very dated at this point stylus, which is fine, but it's not as good as others, and I don't think as good as the one with the Note Max. Your mileage may vary. You may really want that button and that end cap eraser and see those as adding value, but that's not how I see it. So those are the advantages between the Note Max has and that the Quaderno has. The last thing I'll throw in there, a little bit of a question mark, is the front lighting. Now you might say, well, both don't have front lighting, so why is this a thing? It may not be, but generally speaking, Kaleido 3 devices have a darker background, meaning that in darker environments, it can be more difficult to read. So that's a factor, particularly if you're reading PDF documents, that is going to be more of an issue with the Quaderno than it would be with the Note Max. So I'm not going to necessarily say it's a plus for the Note Max because the Note Max doesn't have front lighting, but it's definitely a consideration that does, again, lean toward the Note Max as a benefit, this lighter background. So this is how I'm looking and gauging the Quaderno versus the Note Max. And the list is pretty compelling for the Note Max and not nearly as compelling for the Quaderno. You would have to have a very specific focus on PDF reading and basic note-taking and color on a 13-inch device that the Quaderno provides without needing all those other features that the Note Max provides. And I don't think it's ultimately a compelling package. Compounding in all this is that there's something, and maybe I'm being a little harsh by saying this, but there's something a little cynical about the way that Fujitsu is putting this product on the market. It's almost like, let's take what we've done in the past, slap a Kaleido 3 screen on it, and call it a day. So, for example, not having a cover is one example of that. Again, that might be rectified at some point soon. But even more particular, from what I've seen on YouTube videos, the software experience is really almost identical to what it was on the Generation 2. And given how far the industry has evolved, as evidenced by the Note Max, that's kind of unforgivable at this point. I mean, it really feels like this is just a quick cash grab on Fujitsu's part. Now, that may not be the case, and to be fair, I'm kind of reading into my own bias into the situation, but that's my take on it. I mean, I'm looking at this and going, what thought did Fujitsu put in from Generation 2 to Generation 3 other than adding this Kaleido 3 screen, which they didn't even invent, right? They're just purchasing those from e-ink. It's hard to see what that is. And again, where the Quaderno potentially has strengths, I think the Note Max actually does most of the things better. I think I would rather do PDF reading and annotating on the Note Max, despite, the advantages the Quaderno certainly has around, weight and durability. I would much rather do note-taking on the Note Max. And I have a lot more options with the Note Max. We haven't even gone into this about like connecting with cloud services, about moving files on and off the device, which I hear, I don't know from personal experience, but I hear is a bit of a pain on the Fujitsu device. I just don't see it. I just don't think there's a compelling case to be made here. And for people who are looking for color on a 13-inch device, I would recommend waiting. I think this is something that we'll see development and technology in this area. It may take 1, 2, or 3 years to get there, but it's probably going to be worth waiting. I don't think devices coming out with this particular screen, this version of Kaleido 3, is going to be worth it, in my opinion. Unless you really want color and you really want to, again, you have to have a use case that just aligns perfectly with what the Quaderno offers, and then maybe, but even then you're going to be spending a premium for it. I just don't know. So anyway, I just wanted to share, that's my thought process, why I won't be reviewing the device, why I don't think it brings anything compelling to the marketplace. Certainly feel free to disagree for yourself, but I at least wanted to share my perspective on the matter. Okay, I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, please pop those in the comments. Or if you have disagreements, a different take on it, I'd love to hear that as well. All right, until then, hope you have a great day.